Hi, I'm Jerry Hyde, Youth Services Specialist at the Ames Public Library, and welcome to Well Read, a program about a little bit of this and a little bit of that at your Ames Public Library. Our This and That in the last 4 shows have been all about books of 2012 and what books speak to you, what books speak to us, what books have spoken to the committee members that choose the best of the best. And that's what this last part, our 4th show in the 4-part series, is all about, is the award winners that we have had. Now, my award winner for this year happens to be the book that I've shared with every show, The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lesmore, only because this book has spoken to me in many, many ways. It's taken a person, a young man, that books are very, very important. Kind of a disaster happens, like happens in many of our books that we have talked about or that are written, and the letters come off the page, the pages are ripped from the books, and that disaster, whatever that may be, in this book it happens to be a storm-like situation, but a disaster in your life, or something positive in your life that happens, that is how the book speaks to you. And Mr. Lesmore, finds a way to get back to those books and to have those books start talking to him. And as the book goes forward, he grows older and he passes that on to the next generation, to a young girl at the end. The book speaks about how sharing those books are very, very important, how your books that are important to you and you sharing them to someone else is very important. And that's why we are here gathered today to share with you our books that are important to us, and specifically the award-winning books of last year. One of the awards that I know that comes out every year is the Caldecott, and the Caldecott is for the illustration of our books, and it was an award that was developed back in early 1938, I believe. That was because Frederick Melcher thought that there wasn't as much emphasis on the illustrator as it was for the author of the book, so he wanted to honor that illustrator, and who better than Randolph Caldecott, who was an 18th century illustrator. So with me today, I have 3 of our staff members here at the Youth Services Department, Anastasia and Mary Jan and Tanvi, and I believe each and every one of us could just go on and on about the illustrations of our picture books and how wonderful they are, and possibly we might not have chosen this year's winner, but I know that Mary Jen happens to have this year's winner. This is not my hat, and she really loves our story. So
yes, and I particularly love John Klassen, and I think this book, if you haven't read it but you have read his other one, I Want My Hat Back, they are both sort of in a very similar vein, especially with the pictures. They're sort of, I'm not actually sure the medium that he uses, but they sort of look like watercolor prints type pictures, and they're really sort of just unique in their own right and also very beautiful. And I think what makes this book really great is the picture that you see does not necessarily match the text at the top. You know, the little fish is talking about, I stole a hat from a big fish, he was asleep when I did it, and he probably won't wake up for a long time, and that is not exactly what we see in the picture down below. And so it goes through the whole story about saying, oh, he'll never catch me, he'll never find me, and we see what the big fish does. And so I think it's a really fun story to read, especially with story times with little kids, because you can talk about, is that really what's happening, and is that really what the picture is telling us? And so it's a really great conversational book with little ones especially, and the pictures are just gorgeous.
Yeah, and really innovative with the black. Like he said, that was one of the more difficult aspects, was all the black backgrounds.
Well, and the eyes of all the 2 fishes?
Yes.
That are in there. I mean, even starting with the cover, you can see how guilty the little fish is, and you know that he has his hat on. You know he's already done something wrong.
Yes.
Or devious.
Yeah, they're just really, really fun characters.
Yes. And not only did he win, but he also
won the Caldecott Honor for Extra Yarn, which is a fabulous book about a young girl with a slightly magical box of yarn, and great woodland creature characters, and also her whole village, how she brings joy to them. So.
And it is funny, the yarn just keeps on going and going. And
magical yarn.
Magical yarn. It reminded me a lot of what happened at Ryman Gardens this last summer. There, you know, part of, what was that called, where they decorated with the yarn?
The yarn bombing.
Yarn bombing is what came to my mind when I read that story. But we also had other honor books like Creepy Carrots and Sleep Like a Tiger, a wonderful going to bed book. One Cool Friend, and I know this was one of our favorites, Green, did receive an honor book as well. But there were so many out there that it would be very difficult to decide and have to be on that committee. Because again, you know, all these illustrations and the books kind of talk to you, and you bring that to the table when you read the story. So we're going to go right on to the Geisel Award. And the Geisel Award is all about our beginner readers, our early readers. And now we don't own the Up Tall and High, which kind of talks...
It's on its way.
It's on its way.
Yep.
And we know what it's about, you know, that it's a chapter about these 3 different animals and kind of a chapter book, but not a chapter book.
Very early chapter
Very
book.
early chapter book. Lots of illustrations and early chapters. But we have a couple of these, of the honor books. And Theodor Geisel, if you don't know who Theodor Geisel is, it's actually Dr. Seuss. And they honored him with an award for our easy-to-read books, our beginner reader books, several years back. And Mo Willems has won an honor book very, very many times. So we've got the Piggy and Elephant books, and then the Rabbit and Robot is another one. But Mary Jen, would you like to talk about Pete the Cat and his 4 groovy buttons?
I always love to talk about Pete the Cat.
Will you sing for us?
Maybe. So if you haven't met Pete the Cat, you need to, because he is a fabulous groovy cat. And this is great, yes, because it's an easy reader that kids would really enjoy. But also there are a lot of concepts in here. So there's really great sort of primary colors in all of the pages. And so the main focus here is numbers. And so he starts out with 4 groovy buttons. And then, you know, there's the number 4 there, and you can count the 4 buttons. And then he sings his song because he loves his buttons so much. My buttons, my 4 groovy buttons. And then, pop! Oh no, one of them falls off. How many buttons are left? And so you get to do a little math in addition to counting. There's 4 minus 1 equals 3, the big number 3, and then you can count them too. This is also really great to do colors with for the really little ones, preschool and such. And there's the song too. I mean, who doesn't want to learn math with a song? So pretty much all the Pete the Cat books come with a song, which is really fantastic, a really great print motivator, I think, for the little ones, and also just a really groovy cat. So it's a wonderful book.
Wonderful, and I think Dr. Seuss or Theodor Geisel would be very proud of the winners in the honor books this year, and his statement of a person is a person, no matter how small, is so very true of how important these awards are for our youngest kids as well. That the quality, it's brought the quality up of the easy-to-read books to a level that is still going high, you know, higher up. So wonderful, wonderful way of celebrating the illustrators and celebrating the writers of these 2 age groups. So. We have another standard award that's been around for quite a long time. The Caldecott is in their 75th anniversary this year. Right. So thinking back on that, the Newbery now has been around since 1921. And again, that Frederick Melcher guy was thinking that we needed to honor and bring the quality of children's literature up to a higher par and bring some attention to those authors. And so at that time, he asked or presented it to the American Library Association, which is what many of these awards that we are talking about in this show sponsor them, or the American Children's Library Service group helps out with. And so this award is given to the writer, the author of our juvenile fiction, juvenile nonfiction, poetry, young adult books. At the time, there weren't teen books necessarily when they did it. It's interesting if you go out to the American Library Association website and take a look at all the different awards, how the rules or the guidelines for the awards are very sparse at the beginning, and then like you go out for our most recently Prince Awards and those awards, the legal world has really reflects itself in what is expected. So we're going to go with our Newbery Award winner, and I get to talk about this one, which it was funny because I know we all thought one book was going to win, and so of the one weekend that I chose to not read the other one and read this one, and it definitely was a very good winner, a very good choice of that. The one and only Ivan, a wonderful read aloud that you could read aloud, a wonderful reading to yourself, and a wonderful adult book too to take a look at and take a look. And Ivan is our silverback gorilla there, and then we have our little elephant. This happens to be Ruby. Stella had been there, but Stella and the silverback, or Ivan, were in a mall area that there was a circus, and they performed 3 times a day, every day. The elephant did, and the gorilla was brought because he was mighty, and there's a big, sign outside of the mall, showing him very fierce. But when you read this story, he's not a fierce animal at all, and he's very thoughtful and very caring. And of course, there's a stray dog that comes into the picture to kind of make that trio type of interaction. And right away in the story, the elephant is somewhat abused and passes away, dies. And so, get your Kleenexes out. But it does give you a sense of, talking about how you should and how we should be as a public be concerned about how our animals are confined and that type of thing. So wonderful discussion material. But then they get Ruby, who is our tiny little elephant, and she's a baby elephant. And she comes to there, and shortly before the other elephant passes away, and Stella makes Ivan promise that he won't allow her, the little baby elephant, to stay captive all of their life, that she should get to see other animals of her own kind, because he hasn't seen his own kind for 20-some years. Mm-hmm. And how sad that that would be, not to know, even for animals, not to see someone or another animal. So the story continues, and our Ivan is also an artist, and he can draw pictures, and he also then begins to write letters. And as the story continues and unfolds, he has written a message for the public, and then that brings the outside public into the zoo people to come and take care of it. And so they find some of the abuses that are happening and make it happen that they all get to go back to the zoo, not out to where they came from or where they were captive at, but back to a place that they are with whom they know other animals. And so the last part of the book talks about when Ivan goes out into the zoo area and he sees Stella, or Ruby, and he sees her, and you understand how happy he is. And he's still painting and doing all that type of stuff. So the one and only Ivan, when you read the cover and stuff, it is a true story, or based on a true story. And Catherine Applegate does a fabulous job of tying all that together and telling the story in her wonderful style that she has. So very great winner, should have been a winner, is a winner, and I would recommend that for read alouds and read by yourself, and adult reading as well. So how about any other, let's see, Newbery. Let me open
Honors.
Newbery Honors here.
This, 3 Times Lucky by Sheila Turnage. I talked about this last week. This is my favorite book of the year, so highly recommended.
And
we also have Splendors and Glooms by Laura Amy Schlitz, which we talked about in a previous episode.
And then we also have the book Bomb. And Bomb is not only an Newbery Honor book, but it's a Siebert informational book and a YALSA Award for Excellence. So would you like to tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, Bomb is by Steve Schenken, and it's about the race to build and steal the world's most dangerous weapon. And when I first heard about, there was a lot of talk about this book, and I was like, atomic bombs, nuclear, I'm not really into that. I don't know that all right, let me sit down and give this a look and see, what is this about? I'll just read a little bit. 50 pages later, I looked up and I was like, I have to finish this book. It is just so well written. And I think what makes it really neat is the way he has the different cast of characters. This is a World War II, obviously, era book, and it talks about Germany and Russia and the United States, and it has spies in it, and sort of flaky scientists, and just regular people, all sort of in the mix. And it's really the way that he sort of stitches the plot together, jumping from one scene to the next, is really intriguing, and it really makes you want to keep going forward to read it. So the actual story itself was really fantastic. There's the beginning of each section has sort of the figures that go into the particular chapter, the particular part. So it has some photographs here, but really it's pretty much a text-based book. So if you're just looking at the writing of it, it's fabulous. But when you get to the end and you see all of the work that he put into this, his source notes go on for pages. They're really fantastic too for teachers out there who want to learn more about particular sections. And he has them divided into character sources, and as you can see, there are quite a few of them, and the different areas that that his research took. And then there are quite a few quotes in the book. So he notes where he found every single quote in the book. And I think that was really just sort of the going over the edge of research. And you could just tell that he really immersed himself in this and just did a fantastic job. And the quotes were really what made it sort of read like a novel, because you were reading the very words that these people said. And in some of them, they're in very top secret sort of situations. And so to know that you're reading the actual words that they said was just really fantastic. So this is really, for the research that was done, for the way that it was written, it's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it, even if you're not interested in atomic bombs.
Well, and the primary sources that he used.
Yes.
And I love the word or your description of stitching it together, because the picture, the primary sources that he used with the pictures and all that. I mean, this is a real story, and it's a real spy story.
It is.
And espionage, and so there's that taste to it. And anyone that's interested in that type of reading, adult or teen or child, will just take this and eat it up.
Absolutely.
So, and then of course it could also be used for school, and a good research type of book as well. Mm-hmm. So now I mentioned the Siebert Award. That is for an informational book. It's an award that was established not very long ago in the 90s, and it's in honor of a Bound to Stay Bound, which is a book publishing company that rebinds and recovers books so they are longer lasting than some of the books can tend to stay. So it is in his honor. He was actually a person, and it's actually Bound to Stay Bound, the list that I'm going through here. So they are very much into preserving and hoping and helping preserve our books that we are reading. So very good. Bomb is a very interesting story. Where do we go from there? Let's see. There were some honor books as well in Siebert honor books, Electric Bend, Moonbird, and Titanic, Voices from the Disaster, that we also own, that you'll be able to look up and see as well. let's go ahead and go to this Coretta Scott King Award. Coretta Scott King has a couple different awards. They honor the author, and they also honor the illustrators of people who honor the African American tradition or group, and also kind of speak to what all is going on in that
that experience.
And that type of thing. So we have several here that we can show, and I know none of us have had the opportunity to read this, and but no crystal stair, all of us have looked at it and have decided that we really want to. It's about that Harlem experience type of area where they, again, that primary resource type of interview. There are different chapters in featuring different people. They call me professor, and I say, you're right, I professed to do something, and I did it. And so then you hear about some of those New York experiences.
Yeah, in a bookstore features
in the
very
bookstore.
prominently. Yeah.
Correct.
So another one about the power of books and community.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we would highly recommend you taking a look at it, as we all have it. We don't have it on hold for us, but I believe many of us will want to do that. And I know if anyone else would like to speak to this one, because we're all Kinnear Nelson fans,
yes.
and we really were disappointed that it didn't get part of the Caldecott Award, but we do have the page that I have marked here. I thought was very, very compelling. You know, I have had dream. So he takes the "I have a dream" speech and puts it into illustrative and form that in his interpretation, and I just think this page speaks to me that and the words are all about, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
I think what makes this book really stunning, clearly the words themselves are very powerful, but even just looking at this picture, the paintings are so stunning. They are so beautiful. And the resolution of them is such that you can actually see the paint strokes and the texture of the canvas that Kinnear Nelson used when he was painting it. And I just thought it was just so neat to be able to see that it was that real. And I think that this is one of those books, there are a few of them that I would just want every single one of these as a painting, to hang up on my walls. They're just absolutely gorgeous.
So I Have a Dream, written, of course, by Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., but illustrated and interpreted by Kinnear Nelson. We're going to go back. These are honor
Coretta Scott
King honor books. Ellen's Broom is a wonderful little historical story, fiction story about how the slaves had, because they couldn't legally be married, they jumped the broom to form their bond. And so this comes out with the minister telling everyone in the church that it has become law now, and it's possible for you to go ahead and be legally married, and so that process is going to happen. And so they go to the judge and get ready to, mom and dad, to get married. And so the young girl brings the broom along, and when they get to City Hall, and the young girl sees, Ellie sees that the next group up has a beautiful dress on, and then she looks at her mother's dress, and it isn't a very fancy dress. And so then she gets an idea, because she has that broom, and her sister and her go out and decorate it. And but the conclusion is interesting too, because they're all excited that they're legally married now, and now this young girl thinks this broom is part of their history, and she wants mom and dad to jump the broom. And you can see just in a little bit of, there's a little tension that they don't want to jump the broom because now they've done it legally. Why does that broom have to be there? But then the young girl tells about that, this is our history. You've always told me, Mom, that this is part of our history, and this is our history now too. So then Mom and Dad do jump the broom on the day that they legally got married too. So a wonderful little book of Ellen's Broom and illustrated. This kind of goes to the direct in a different flavor. The book, or it's called Horse, A Game of Basketball and Imagination. And Christopher Myers, Walter Dean Myers' son, has illustrated and written this book. And Horse is a basketball game, and I remember playing Horse, and it's called, these two friends get together in New York, and they are talking about what it is, what the game is called, and the other boy, it's called Ghost, where he's from. And so they start playing horse and start shooting, and then they are kind of they are competitive. They're not kind of. They are competitive. And as they get talking, they change the rules along the way, and they not only shoot the basket, and they never really shoot the basket. They talk about how they're going to shoot the basket, and several of them go up into the space, and one story gets better than the other story, and they finally they, like I said, they don't ever really play the game itself, but they use their imagination and their mind and artistic abilities, and that's what Christopher Myers wanted to portray more. And definitely a good story in that way too, that he was very successful in doing that. So Coretta Scott King, that award has been around for quite a while as well, and has been celebrated many times. And all these awards, especially the Caldecott Newberry and Coretta Scott King, we do have a pamphlet that's got all our past winners and our current winner, our current winner in the next weeks or so, sharing that information. So if you want to you read some of the older ones that have won the awards, or read and be reminded of what were the winners and the honors, you can pick a brochure up here at the library as well. All right, now I know there's another book that has won quite a few awards, the Bull Pepper Award, an honor, and Michael Prince honor book. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that book?
This is Aristotle and Dante, Discover the Secrets of the Universe. It also won a Stonewall Award. This is a very unhurried book, I'll say. It really takes its time. Which I think would be difficult in some books, but really works well for this book. It's about two boys, Aristotle and Dante, who meet one day at the pool when they're 15 years old. And it takes place over the course of a couple years. So you really get to see this gradual progression in their friendship and how their relationship develops. Ultimately, this book is about two boys who are trying to discover themselves and eventually come to realize that they're both gay. But it's very, like I said, it's a very slow realization. And what really, really shines in this book is the parents of both boys. I think in a lot of YA books, the parents can be absent. Kids kind of deal with a lot of things seemingly on their own, and you're kind of like, well, where were their parents when that happens? But the parents take not necessarily center stage, but they have big roles, and they're so wonderful, and you just wish that every child could have parents like their parents. And ultimately, what both boys realize through the help of their parents is that they don't need to be ashamed of themselves or the way that they love. Another thing that makes this book interesting is that both characters are Hispanic, and it takes place in Texas. And they both have different feelings about their Mexican background. And so the author of this book, he doesn't shy away from stereotypes. He brings it right to the forefront that there is this idea of young Mexican men as being aggressive or as being almost criminal, that a lot of people think of them that way. And it's interesting to see how both boys deal with this and how their parents are sensitive to this and want their sons to remember that they're not that way. They don't have to be that way. They don't have to be what people tell them to be or people expect them to be. So you have different layers of their identities that they're kind of grappling with. It's, like I said, it's a slow book, but it's a beautiful book. It might not necessarily be for everyone, but I think it's worthy of its awards, I think.
Thank you. It also won the Stonewall Book Award, which is a GBLT award that was established in 1971 to honor books that are speaking out and portraying those rights that all of us have to love the way we want to love and be who we are. So, fantastic story, too. Let's see. We also have the Prince Award, which is our Michael Prince Award. What I found that was somewhat sad on this is many of these awards have started since I was a librarian or became part of the library world. And this one I can remember coming into being. It was in 2002. It's for the literary merit. And there's, again, a committee that gets together. Booklist also is a entity that helps people on this committee make those decisions. And it can be fiction or nonfiction, poetry, or an anthology. And again, this is a book written by an American author, or
yeah, actually, The Prince, I think, could be either.
Either out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was what made it more distinct from the Newbery, that they don't have to be an American citizen.
But it does have to be a piece of work that's from January 1st to December 31st of the year before. And the winner of this year is In Darkness by Nick Lane. And this is about a young Haitian boy that's trapped in the bombs and the fighting and the war, and he's been in the hospital now, and there was bomb, and so he's in all this rubble, and he's by himself and trying to survive. And so it's much about his trying to remember and survive and try to get out, and him coming in and out of consciousness. But in that discussion, or that thought process, he goes back to the 18th century and brings in a 18th century former slave that his name is Toussaint Louverture, a French slave that was part of the French Revolution. And so you see some of that history, or you read a little bit about that history, and they kind of go back and forth. But you also learn about this young man's life, and this young man is not a totally innocent person. He is in the hospital because he has been shot and he has been killing people, and it starts out very, very it takes you right out into where you're at. It says, I am the voice in the dark calling out for your help. I am the quiet voice that you hope will not turn to silence, the voice you want to keep hearing because it means someone is still alive. I am the voice calling for you to come and dig me out. I am the voice in the dark, asking you to unbury me, to bring me from the grave out into the light like a zombie. I'm a killer, and I have been killed too, over and over. I am constantly being born. I have lost more things than I have found. I have destroyed more things than I have built. I have seen babies abandoned in trash, and I have seen the dead come back to life. I first shot a man when I was 12 years old. I have no name. There are no names in the darkness because there's no one else, only me, and I already know who I am. I am the voice in the dark, calling out for your help. I mean, that's like the first two paragraphs. So it's not a book for the faint of heart. There's a lot of violence, and there's a lot of emotions that you'll go up and down. You'll hate him, you'll love him, you'll empathize for him. He saw his sister shot and killed right in front of him, his twin sister. I mean, so it is a very violent book, but a very telling book of, again, of what some people in a variety of, or in other countries, have to live day to day with. So, In Darkness by Nick Lane. That was a Prince, some of our Prince honor books. Let's see, I believe we have Aristotle, of course, and Codename Verity.
Yes. Codename Verity is also one that's gotten a lot of attention, and this one is really interesting because it's written from a perspective that you don't usually get. This is also one that takes place during World War II, and the main character is she's working for she works for the British, but she's Scottish. But then she gets caught by the German soldiers in France, and so this is told as her confession. So you know, she has gotten caught. She is there is torture in there. It's not gruesome. There are violent details, but it's not terrible. But it's all told through her confession, and it's really interesting because you get a lot of the details of what was going on in World War II during that time, and a lot of what they talk about is the fact that she can't find paper and all the ways that they need to find paper for her. And you know, there are a few days where she can't write her confession because they can't find paper, and then they find recipe cards, and so she has to write on little bitty recipe cards, and then they find this beautiful sheet music, and she wants someday for somebody to be able to continue to play the sheet music, and so she tries to write between the notes. And there are a lot of really neat details like that. But this is really a book about friendship and the strong bonds of friendship, and I think this was really great for that reason in particular. I know a lot of young adult novels are about romance and, you know, the love that you find when you're 16, and there was absolutely none of that in this, which I was really excited about. The other thing that I really loved about this and Bomb, actually, they're both World War II books, and they talk about a sort of a time and a place that we don't really often talk about. Often we talk about the Holocaust and the Jews, and that is a really important subject, but we also often sort of lose track of the other things that were also going on at that time. And so I like that both of these books sort of talk about the different things that were happening. And so, you know, there are allusions to the Jews and the Holocaust, but it's not the focus of the story. And I would highly recommend this one. I will say it was a little bit of a slow start for me, but it was absolutely worth it in the end. So it's a really great book too. And also, she has this was as a knitter, I really enjoyed this. She talked about there are the mittens that have the flaps that come back, and apparently they sort of came about during that time period. And she actually has a link to a 1940s magazine that has the knitting pattern for those gloves, along with a bunch of other things that you should knit for the people in service. So that was just a really neat little historical fact that she's included in here.
So have you knitted those gloves then?
Well, I have not yet had time.
Gee, I
but
wonder
I'll put
why.
it on the list of things to do.
Well, let's go to another award. This one is called the Mildred L. Batchelder Award, and this is an award that it started in 1966, or was first awarded in 1966, and it's given to a book that is written in a language other than English in a country other than the United States, but then is translated. Thank you. That's the word I wanted. Translated into English and then published in the United States. And our award winner this year is?
It's called My Family for the War by Anne C. Verhoeven. And one of the interesting things is that the award goes to the publisher, because the publisher is taking a huge chance on this book translating into English and translating into our culture. So kudos to our publishers who take those chances. And this one was originally German, and the story is about a girl who, she's 11 when it starts and 16 when it ends. She's a Jew whose family is Protestant in Germany, and her parents make the very hard decision to send her on a Kindertransport train to Britain with many other Jewish children to be taken care of by a British foster family. So she spends most of World War II in Britain with a foster family. And it is a great book just as a matter of like a growing up book. She goes through questions of her friends, betrayal of her friends, is she going to fall in love, what is her true religion, who and why did her parents make this difficult choice, and then also just the understanding what it was like in London during the bombing, and all of that aspect, similar to what you said, Mary Jen. She's a Jew, but her experience is as someone outside of the Jewish area at the time. So just a great book for enjoying a growing up book and a family book. So that's My Family for the War.
And that, in addition to the publisher, you know, what the award was based on is that all children, no matter where they live,
Right.
should have good books. And I think that, like you said, you know, kudos. It is a chance to take that to publish that and bring it into another culture, into our country as well, and sell and.
Yeah, and how much richer our experience is for
Right.
hearing the stories from other languages as well. So.
Correct. So we also have an award called the Schneider Family Book Awards, and this was in honor of a Dr. Schneider, and they're still alive, or she's still alive, for an author or illustrator for artistic expression of a character that has a disability experience, or for a child. It can be for children, teens, and for the picture books. So we have several of them, and unfortunately we don't have any of them. So, but the first one, the one for picture books, is called Back to Front and Upside Down. And I definitely know, after looking at it, that it's all about dyslexia, or, you know, writing our letters back to front and upside down, and coping with that for our youngest that are learning how to write. A Dog Called Homeless is about a young girl whose mother has passed away, just recently passed away, and dad is grieving and not paying attention, doing, and so this young girl believes that she has seen her mother at the gravesite, and there's also a dog that is a homeless dog, and that's why it's called A Dog Called Homeless. And this dog is very much related to her sightings with her mother and her conversations, and her father tells her, and her aunt keeps telling her to stop talking about that. Well, there's a fundraiser at school that they are challenging people not to talk, and this girl stops talking, but it takes days before her father and her aunt knows that she's even stopped talking. And so a very moving book, and again, it definitely is a book that we will be getting to put on our shelves, but it sounds like there's definitely a reason why that we would have it. We did have the teen book, Somebody Please Tell Me Who I Am, by Mazer. But let's go ahead and go to the William C. Morris Award. This is an award that came out in 2009 for the debut authors. So who did we have as a winner this year?
We have Serafina by Rachel Hartman. I don't have the book, but I do have the audiobook. And Serafina is a dragon book. And I don't usually love dragon books, to be totally honest, but I loved this book. It's about 1,000 pages. Unlike Mary Jen's experience with the Diviners, where she flew through it, I did not fly through Serafina, but that's okay because it was absolutely worth it. So the story is about a girl named Serafina who is growing up in this sort of alternate medieval world. It's not quite our world. And she lives among humans, but also among dragons. And the dragons in this story can take human shape. So there's this very uneasy, not alliance, but there's just a very uneasy relationship between these dragons and the humans. There's a treaty, a 40-year-old treaty between the two. But right around the anniversary, the 40th anniversary of this treaty, a prince is killed. And he's actually beheaded in a way that suggests that he was killed by dragons. And so, of course, everything is up in the air now, and the royal family is involved, and the dragons have all these secrets, and humans have all these secrets. And in the middle of this is Serafina, who is a very gifted musician, but she also has a very big secret that she is very, very, very much trying to keep under wraps, because if she reveals it, then it could mean her life and her family's life and everyone she loves. So Serafina becomes involved in this intrigue, this sort of royal intrigue. And she actually has alliances on both sides, in the human world and in the dragon world. So she's in a very unique position in this book. And what makes this book so wonderful is the world building that happens. It reminded me very much of the world building that you would see in His Dark Materials or Harry Potter. That's why the novel is so long. It's because of all of this, but none of the details were irrelevant or unnecessary. And you see this whole religion and system of art and writing and everything, and you're so immersed in this world. I mean, you are absolutely there. And so it has everything. It's just got, mystery, romance. But the other thing that makes this so wonderful is the characters. They are all developed. I mean, even the secondary characters, which is so rare, you often see them playing these roles that support the main character. But all of the secondary characters have their own motivations and their own lives, and every single character is so multidimensional, which is so wonderful to see. It's very hard to believe that this is a first novel. Very, very hard to believe.
So did you end up liking it?
I loved it. Yes, I did. I mean, I think I liked it from the beginning, but it was just, I really had to power through it.
And I guess my point is that when we pick up a book, we tend to, again, we bring our own experiences, but we also pick up books that we think we want or that we've read. So if I'm a mystery lover, I pick up mystery books, and I don't think outside the box or read outside the box. And so I think the award winners help us, challenge us to do that and make us better. I know we talked about being a reader's advisor for many, many people, and those that come into the library. And so it helps us be a better reader, and helps us better help the people that come into the library. But to challenge our own selves, maybe that should be a New Year's resolution for some of us or all of us, or that, we try something that we haven't, try to read something that we haven't read before, or a type of. So I think we've gone through many of the awards. I would like to conclude with our Odyssey Award, which happens to be the video award. Audio, excuse me, award, and that is the
Fault in Our Stars.
And we talked about that, the book form, but that award was again another award that started since I've been a librarian, and not very long, to honor that oral tradition of reading out loud, that being read out loud or being told that story verbally is as important as reading the words on the page. And I, again, would like to refer back to my book that I've been talking about, The Fantastic Flying Books of Morris Lesmore. And just to end the show with the last 2 pages of the book. And again, we've gotten to at the end of our story where he has decided that that he'll let the book stay there, and then he pointed to his heart, but all of you will always be in my heart. And then he flies away, and the books are all very, very sad because he's not there any longer. But then the books heard a small, expectant sound. There in the doorway was a little girl. She looked around with wonder. Then something fantastic happened. Morris Lesmore's book flew up to her and opened its pages. The girl began to read. And so our story ends as it began, with the opening of a book. Thank you very much for listening to the Best of 2012. Until next time, happy reading.